Hi, everyone. This is going to be a bit of a different episode today, so I thought I would just explain it at the top. Chris has been going through some health issues recently for the last couple of months and needed to take a little bit of a break to recover. So his wife, Kirsten, had an idea that for this episode that we could have some guests join me in his absence. And then we're probably going to go on a little bit of a hiatus just until he's feeling better, and then we can resume with episode 50. But then I got sick for a week, so we had to delay this even more. But now I am here with two special guests to fill in Chris's shoes today. And I guess that means that you have to split the shoes. So I don't know who wants the left or the right. I'll let you fight over it. But let me introduce you. I have here with me to my left, I have Kenton Steiner, and I also have Mark Artrip. So, Kenton, we'll have you go first. Tell me just a fun fact about yourself or anything that might, establish your credibility as being someone with some good useless knowledge.
Well, in terms of my credibility, I don't know that this is going to help a lot, but I've been thinking long and hard since you said to give you a fun fact. And I came across the fact about myself that I have never called an Uber in my life. I have ridden in Ubers that other people have called, but I myself personally have never called for an Uber anywhere that I have traveled or been.
Does that count other rideshare services?
Yes, actually. I have
Wow.
Lyft, any of those. I have never once called one. It kind of started unintentionally. I just never had need for one, but now it's kind of turned into a mission to see how long I can go without experiencing the feeling of calling one.
I was afraid to say that about myself, but I've called like 2 or 3 now. But I made it a long time. But I didn't realize you were a grandpa, so that's it's impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Mark. So how about you? What is like one fun fact you want the audience to know about yourself?
I tried to, again, I thought long and hard about this because I know people they're gonna base everything on this one thing. So I think that probably the most fun one I could come up with, I have set up 5 couples that are married. So if you've been around me for 10 minutes, I've probably tried to put you on a blind date or ask about someone that's single to put them on a blind date or something. It's a twisted hobby. It's been a long time. I'm in a very bad dry spell. Haven't set up a marriage in I don't even know, 7 years or something. But
Ooh,
I like to, the life goal is 10. And I like to think it's like getting to 500 home runs. Like you guaranteed make the Hall of Fame no matter how many times you've struck out.
Right. Exactly. I mean, compared to our Kenton and I's combined 0 marriages that we have set up.
Exactly.
It is. Yeah. I think it is like the 500 home runs, like you're saying. One fun fact about the 3 of us, though, that I wanted to kind of share with the audience is that all of us grew up in Wayne County, Ohio. This is a frequent point of conversation between us. But the other weird thing is that we never really hung out, despite all living in relatively close proximity, kind of knowing of each other in different ways.
Yeah.
So I thought I would share a little piece of Wayne County trivia with you guys. And this comes back all the way back from Bonnie Schultzman's 3rd grade history class. I've got a steel trap, and I do remember a surprising amount of things from that 3rd grade class.
Is Bonnie listening right now, you think?
I don't know. I did talk to her in prep for this.
Wow. That's how Wayne County is. You still know your teachers and your Facebook friends.
Oh, exactly. Yes, she is, I think, about 80 years old now.
Okay.
So let me see here. So in her 3rd grade history class, this was like the first year that you had a special social studies or whatever, compared to just you have the one homeroom teacher. And one of the big things that we did in her class was her local history unit that, from what I read online, is she just said, hey, we need to have this. We don't have this. I'm going to make this myself. And she also had a documentary that she made that we would watch in the class. And the documentary, it was done in 1997. My dad was one of the cameramen.
Wow.
And I made an appearance in the documentary. I played a young Johnny Appleseed.
Wow.
I was 5 years old. And for some reason, I watched this back last week, that I am listed in the credits as Pay Gessel. And I don't know if it was a mistake or not, but for years I have been trying to search for what my stage name should be, and I think it was there all along.
Yeah.
So one of my biggest takeaways from that class as a 3rd grader was about the early days of Wayne County. And this may be a surprise to you guys, but Wayne County used to be a really big deal. So in the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 was this law that was passed by the U.S. government, just kind of in the early years of the U.S. being a country, and it designated this large chunk of land that was going to be turned into states in the future, and Ohio was included in this. But while it was still a territory, it had several different like administrative counties that it was broken up into, and one of those was Wayne County, and it was huge. I'm talking like if Chicago existed at the time, Chicago was in Wayne County. Milwaukee, also in Wayne County.
Wow.
The county seat was not Worcester. It was Detroit.
Wow.
Whoa.
But
So-
it's safe to say that Chicago still wishes they were in Wayne County.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. They've got some FOMO.
Just a little bit. It may have only been Native Americans in 1787,
Yeah.
but I'm sure, yes. So within a few years of that being passed, though, they redistrict stuff. They start like chipping off little bits and start making new counties. And then 15 years later, Ohio becomes a state. And, they end up splitting the Wayne counties where like Wayne County, Michigan is where Detroit is now. But, in Wayne County, Ohio stays in Ohio. But, for that small period of time, a large, just like, millions of square miles, probably, I didn't do the math, but it's a lot, was all part of Wayne County. And it's just fallen, a little bit into obscurity for the next 200 years. But, you never know when it's going to come back. I think, maybe this is a bit of this was like a shrinking down, and maybe it will grow back bigger in the future. It's hard to say.
And we're from the real Wayne County. It's not the Detroit one doesn't claim to be the legitimate one.
I do not know, but maybe we should start a feud. I mean,
Yes.
there's no, it's not like they have like, a hip hop culture that they could come back with diss tracks on us or anything. and
Will
we
the
don't.
real Wayne County please stand up?
Right.
Yeah.
Which is what's funny though, is as I was reading about this, I was reading about like Mad Anthony Wayne, who's like the namesake for Wayne County, and his descendant who's alive today, his name is John Wayne, and he's a rapper who lives in California.
Man, am I going to look him up later.
And it's even funnier because John Wayne, like the actor, took his stage name from Mad Anthony Wayne. So it's like there's even kind of a lineage there of all of that. So I don't know if he's ever been to Wayne County or not, but
I bet he has.
I would say he's like he's tangential. He's like a cousin to Wayne County in a way.
Can I ask you the thing that you miss the most about Wayne County?
Ooh, that is a very good question. I would say that there are a few like back roads that only Amish and a couple of my cousins drive on that are very secluded, and I like to walk on sometimes.
I should have given the outlier too. Our moms are probably listening to this.
Oh, yeah.
And we're supposed to say you missed your mom, but you're not allowed to say that. So yeah, I was going to say I miss the Wayne County Fair.
Okay.
And Hartzler's ice cream. Those are my ones.
Well,
Yeah.
Hartzler's is coming down here.
Yeah, it is. It's here in London. I've had it.
Oh man,
I make that drive.
that
Now,
is so good.
Is it as good as Wayne County location?
It's made in
Hartzler's?
Wayne County, and they truck it down, so it's the same thing. Yeah,
I've been getting Hartzler's milk at the store recently. Like I've got like the glass jugs out, like that I need to go and return to the store for like $3. But like I am glad to incorporate that into my daily life.
Yeah.
While we may not live in Wayne County anymore, I think it is safe to say that Wayne County lives in us. And I think this may be the most anyone has ever discussed Wayne County on a podcast.
I was recently told that I talk about Wayne County too much, so I'm scared to be associated with this now. People are going to think I told you to talk about that, but
Yes.
I didn't.
Well, I think that we are now officially Wayne County's premier podcast.
/ only.
Welcome to the Factoid Podcast. You didn't ask for it, but we're going to talk about it anyways. I'm Payton Gessel.
I'm Kenton Steiner.
And I'm Mark Artrip. And I was very nervous about today. I can't lie to you. This was something that I got worked up about to be here and say facts. Because this podcast is something that I listen to on the elliptical machine, and I have very high standards for myself. So I thought of some things I could talk through. I weighed them, and I wondered if they would ruin my friendship with Payton. I wondered if he would not like me. I wondered if...
You're right on the edge, honestly.
Yeah.
It's like one
Cheater.
just slight, one personal attack, and I mean, I could flip this table.
Yeah, and people, and if those of you that don't know, he has a raging temper, so that would be right on brand for flip tables. He's very Christ-like in that way. So, I was recently told I talk about Wayne County too much and the NBA and LeBron, and so I found out that a lot of my topics were headed those directions, and I was like, I better not go there. So, the thing that I wanted to talk about today was actually the birth of rap. People would maybe know this if they know me well, but if you knew, the narrative of me, I'm a balding 42-year-old redhead who grew up in a cornfield. I don't think I have maybe the makings of a hip hop fan, but I've always just loved rap, and so I thought I'd take a moment here, tell you guys some things. Hopefully, this is educational. I think it's going to be.
Yes.
So the history of rap. You guys probably know that rap and hip hop, those two words kind of are used synonymously. Hip hop culture kind of contains four things. It's DJing, breakdancing, graffiti, and MCing or rapping, none of which I think that any of us are good at. But all of those things...
You have not seen my B-Boy stance, Mark.
That's fair. We will have to do that later, maybe.
Yes.
I have seen Kenton's graffiti, and it's actually why he ended up in juvie, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Just like insulin.
Yeah. So hip hop culture, all those things kind of started to emerge out of the South Bronx in the 70s, and MCing and rapping kind of being the one that was picking up steam happening at block parties. And early on was kind of influenced by something that's come out of Jamaican culture called toasting or sound system culture. And so that was kind of pioneered. I found some Jamaican DJs' names this week. One of them was named U-Roy, and one of them was named King Tubby. If someone called me King Tubby, I think I'd cry, but it's for different reasons. So as that culture evolved, DJs kind of began to take funk and soul and disco records, and they would take the instrumental breakdowns. And you guys obviously, I think most of us can picture turntables and a mixer. They would play, the 2, 4, 8 measures of the instrumental breakdown on one. They'd have a mirrored record on the other side, and they would flip back and forth between the two. So you're playing 4 measures on your right side while you're flipping back the left hand. You flip over, and you can make the beat go as long as you wanted. The
amount of dexterity that has to take is like, I don't think you can, understate how. Like, have you ever scratched? Like, have either of you ever scratched a record before? Like, tried to do anything like that? Paula doesn't let you do that on her Casey Musgraves records.
No, surprisingly not.
I'm not sure if I should say this. Some guys go through the phase in college where they think they're going to get dreadlocks. I went through a DJ phase and owned vinyl tables. I was not very good, and it was very difficult. But yeah, it's funny because I'm thinking back, and I'm like, oh man, it's like if suddenly I told you I was going to learn to ride a unicycle, and you're like, that's not easy, Mark. Don't do it. But yeah, I've scratched a little. I hesitate to.
I have not. So I'm just trying to say that I can't imagine how difficult it would be to do that. Keep your time and measures. Yeah. One hand over here, one hand over there,
and not to mention that you're doing it in front of a crowd. So it's one thing to fail at something in your house, but then you think like you're supposed to be entertaining hundreds of people. Yeah, that's terrifying. So these kind of party MCs, eventually came to be known as rappers. They would intro DJs who were the real show at the time because they were playing music, playing funk, soul, and all this stuff. They'd be hyping up the crowd. And they started kind of talking between songs. And so it would interact with the crowd, joke with the crowd, hype the crowd up. One of the earliest guys who was doing that was a guy named Coke LaRock. And he was the DJ of someone who later became known as the father of hip hop, DJ Kool Herc. And luckily, the names are going to get better. I like to think because those names don't strike fear into anyone. But those guys were some of the first famous people that were working parties. And originally, these rappers, what they were doing was kind of dismissed as a fad, which you can see. I mean, they're pulling 30-second blurbs out of disco records, and everyone's like,
right.
Oh, disco's the real thing here. This is just a sideshow. And all of a sudden it kind of hit the mainstream though. And so you probably know this. This is one thing I think everybody knows. Sugar Hill Gang Rapper's Delight was kind of the first mainstream hit. And so that happened in 1979. And the following year, in 1980, there's a guy named Curtis Blow, who was the first rapper to sign with a major label. He released a song called "These Are the Breaks." So you've probably heard that phrase. And that song was a top 5 hit. And so that was, when something goes beyond a fad, kind of like when, we always used to make fun of influencers, and then all of a sudden they were getting endorsements, and it was like, oh, you can do this full time. It was probably the same thing for rap. So that record of his went on to sell 500,000 units. His first album to be gold. He toured outside of the United States, and all of a sudden people were like, oh, this is a real thing. And so there's all kinds of artists. I'm hesitant to even name drop people because I'm sure as I progress here, someone's going to be like, he left off the 11th best rapper of all time from 1984, and they're going to judge me, and it's going to take my street cred. But
what about Busta Rhymes?
Exactly. Sidebar: Busta Rhymes, the best hip hop show I've ever been to.
Nice,
great entertainer. But anyway, moving on. So there are all kinds of people, whose names started to come up. Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. There were people writing the lyrics, and back then, a lot of the lyrics, you look at the state of America and what was going on, people were writing things that were kind of socially conscious. They were addressing things like the struggle of the inner city, and inequality. And so maybe not on purpose, but just addressing the topic of the days, rap kind of had, I don't want to say a political edge. I think that's probably why there was, some animosity toward it, and probably why people viewed it in a weird way, but it kind of kept evolving as an art form, rapping and DJing. You mentioned scratching. There was a DJ named DJ Grand Wizard Theodore, which that name makes me nervous now, but he was said to have accidentally invented the method of scratching. So obviously I mentioned, your right hand, you'd be playing a record, spinning the other one back and transitioning between them with your mixer. And maybe he was nervous in front of a crowd. Maybe he, pulled the volume over, but he scratched something. And if you scratch it right, you can catch a bass line and do that like, kind of thing. Or you can catch a word and be like, Payton, And at some point he did the, kind of scratch thing. And it caught on. It was a huge deal, and even though he did it accidentally at first, it got enormously huge. And eventually, Grandmaster Flash and some of these other guys were doing it. And so that continued to evolve as an art form. And eventually we enter, kind of the 80s, which some people would say is the golden era. Rap conversations are just like basketball. Old men tell you it was the 80s. Younger guys tell you it was the 90s. Some people say it's now, and you can tell their age based on what they say. But groups like Run DMC and Public Enemy and NWA started to come along. And you see just a lot more, thematic stuff. You see things invading pop culture. You see even, gangster rap coming out. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie on NWA.
Yes, absolutely.
Probably not safe for the kids, but a fascinating movie, fun biopic. And then you also, eventually you had the Grammys started to recognize rap. And there's trivia. Anybody know who won the first rap Grammy?
Lauryn Hill.
No, it was DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. Our good friend Will Smith, the movie star now, won that first Grammy. That was at the 31st annual Grammy Awards in 1989. So,
that's a lot earlier than I expected.
Yeah, and yet very late. When you consider that this had been mainstream for a decade, and yet maybe was kind of being shelved. And so, rap evolved all through the 90s, and people continued to sample records. Now I think, there's songs that I can think of that have been sampled and made into 3 or 4 songs that I've known in my lifetime. And so rap's always had that sampling culture because it started on records, but eventually technology got to a place where it was better and people were making more and more, original beats and production, and things were improving. And so you started to see artists breaking in and, having a huge cultural impact. So there were, these are names obviously everyone knows, but guys like Tupac and the Notorious B.I.G. and Nas and Jay-Z and the Wu-Tang Clan. And things even got to a place where hip hop started to have cultural styles. And I was thinking this week, the different cultural styles that I've seen in my life. I remember the West Coast, East Coast feud as a kid in Sterling, Ohio. It didn't really affect me too much.
Right. I was going to say, who did you align with and why?
I was, I was a Notorious B.I.G. guy, but it turns out it didn't matter. But yeah, I mean, you've probably heard, there's West Coast hip hop had like the G-Funk era. You had, Dr. Dre and Snoop and Warren G, and you had this East Coast, like people describe as a boom bap sound, more classic drums and, dating back to like KRS-One and all kinds of people. And so, but in my lifetime, I mean, I can think of, New York and LA. I can remember when St. Louis hip hop was cool. I can remember when Atlanta got big. I remember people from Miami and, infusing reggaeton. And I remember Houston getting big and then Houston getting big again. And then Detroit had its phase. And then even with Kid Cudi for a second, it was cool to be from Cleveland and MGK and even, New Orleans and different people. And so, that kind of all gave way to the 2000s, and you started to see, like I said, hip hop was mainstream, but then you had people pulling in rock and all kinds of things, and so you had people like Eminem and Kanye and Outkast and eventually 50 Cent, and that's where I think people are like, is this rap if he's half singing the chorus? But you've just seen these guys like Lil Wayne really start to mix genres and be huge in pop culture circles, and so I can think of someone like Lil Jon. You say his name and you want to laugh and kind of smile. He's like a cartoon, and yet I'm like, yeah, he's made some money and shaped some culture and was on some pretty big records, and the same, guys like T.I. And so I was looking up names here, as rap moved into the 2010s, guys like Travis Scott and Young Thug and Cardi B and Migos and Future and all of these people, eventually gave way to, I would say, some huge artists now, J. Cole and Kendrick Lamar and different people. But I think the thing that has changed now is streaming platforms have made it, which is ironic where we're recording this right now. You can kind of take over the world with a microphone, a laptop in your bedroom.
Yeah, I'm going to be sampling when you said the Payton. That's going to be on my mixtape here.
Yeah, we'll get that on there. And but sampling kind of paved the way. Streaming and you've got people like Chance the Rapper and Lil Nas X. I think that Old Town Road song he came out with, he bought the beat on some YouTube sample for $20 and then proceeded to make millions. And so that's kind of become the blueprint now, and so the game has changed, but obviously hip hop is more viral than ever, controls culture more than ever, and rap is not a fad. And so I admit that I'm an old man. I don't keep up on the reggaeton scene or Afro beats, or but I still try to follow people. I know obviously the last year Drake and Kendrick Lamar had this huge feud, and now Kendrick's doing the Super Bowl, the first person to do that solo, and you can still watch and see that rap has international influence, but also is dictating culture. And one of the things I find fascinating now, it used to be that kind of female rap acts, I don't want to talk down and say they were a novelty, but they used to not be respected. And now there are people, like Missy Elliott, like Nicki Minaj, even Cardi B, who I would say are making lists. I'll kind of allude to here in a second of all time greatest. And so, female rap has really changed, and has a place in culture now. And so anyway, what started as a platform of kind of activism, for marginalized voices, has gone to not just reflect cultural trends, but I think shape cultural trends and dictate, I would say, even the world's economy. It dictates what's relevant and has proved that it has some incredible staying power. And so that is the quick history of rap in a nutshell. Like I said, I get nervous mentioning names, but I looked up some things, and maybe we could argue about Mount Rushmore.
I was about to ask about a Mount Rushmore.
I'm scared to say it because this kind of tells your personal leanings. I think it's pretty widely accepted at this point that Jay-Z is the top of the mountain.
Probably. I mean, I feel like it would be hard to argue against him at this point,
and
unless you disagree, Kenton.
That's what I hear the most.
Yeah.
So,
and some people put Eminem in different places. I'm a pretty big fan, and so I would put him on there. Someone that a lot of people wouldn't put in the top 10, but I go by pop culture impact. I think his production and different things. I would put Kanye West in my top 4, and I know I'm probably making some enemies there, but when I think you look at like everything he's done, because I think you could kind of give him a third of Jay-Z's career if we want to.
I mean, like honest. if you look too deep into someone like Thomas Jefferson, you find a lot of skeletons in the closet too. So I think I can see the argument for just like total cultural impact on rapping.
Yeah, and this is going to be a spicy take. I would put Drake on there. I know that not everything he does is rap, but again, I think like there's just a lot of hits there. A lot, years and years of hits and a catalog. The cool young kids are telling me that Kendrick should be on there, and as I thought about it,
I was wondering about that.
I've tried to be open-minded and not be an old man, but I would put him 5th right now. Still, I think he's continued to do some great stuff, But yeah, if you want to look these things up, I mean, there are lists. Forbes did a list. Billboard has a list. Lots of different things. I know Billboard and I think I'm trying to remember who it was. They partnered for one with Vibe magazine, and so they did one in 2015 and then one in 2023, and those are kind of considered the standards. Obviously, a lot can change in culture then, But there was a time Notorious B.I.G. was the top of that list, and now it's kind of transitioned to Jay-Z. But here's what I think is worth highlighting. Eminem, Jay-Z, Kendrick, Lil Wayne, Nas, and Notorious B.I.G. are the ones who made both lists. And so I would say that's kind of considered, the top 5, top 6 there.
That's fair.
And that's something you can fight about over Christmas with your grandma. Ask her if she's more of a Nas person, or who she really likes there. See what she says.
All right, so to start my topic out today, I'd like to ask a question. Have either of you guys ever won a giveaway?
Yes. So when I was about 10 years old, my grandma signed me up for a Cleveland Indians Junior Indian giveaway. And the giveaway were very good third base row seats at a game.
Wow.
So I was in, I think maybe like the first row or the second row, got to do like meet and greet with the team. So this is like Omar Vizquel, Jim Thome, CeCe Sabathia.
Legends.
And then, of course, I had to let CeCe know, like, hey, we have the same birthday.
And he said, I care a lot.
Oh, sure. Yeah, for the 8 seconds that he walked over and said, hey. Yeah. So I guess I would count that as a giveaway where like I won. I did not apply myself, but I would say since my grandmother applied for me that I still would count that as winning.
Sure.
I would say that I just had an identity crisis and realized I've never won anything, but I'd never thought about it till right now.
Wow.
It's very sobering.
I mean, we can make something up for you right now just to make you feel better.
I've never won anything. Yeah, I was just thinking about it.
We'll get you a movement tee next year.
Thank you. Some trophy to make me feel good.
So as a kid growing up, I was always very fascinated by the idea of giveaways. You'd watch like America's Funniest Videos, and they're giving away a trip to Disney World for the funniest video of the season and things like that. Or you go to a sporting event and they bring somebody out on the field or the court and they have to complete some kind of challenge to win $10,000 from a half court shot or something like that. But in college, I actually did win a giveaway. After entering a ton, since as a broke college student, you just enter lots of giveaways to try to win free stuff. I retweeted Brutus Buckeye on Twitter and won a t-shirt for the Penn State game that year for football. Then they sent me like an email afterwards that was like, all right, so here's what you need to do to claim your prize. You like go to this building, you find these people, and just give them your information and they'll give you your t-shirt. So I show up to this alumni association building on a part of campus I've never been to. I walk in the building, there's nobody there. I'm just like lost. So I just spend like 5 to 10 minutes walking around this building, trying to find anybody to direct me. And eventually I did find someone. They told me where to go and it was just real quick. I was just like, yeah, I won the giveaway. They're like, all right, here you go. And I just left and that was that. A little bit sketchy. When I showed up, I wasn't sure where to park, if it was free, if I would get towed by the time I was back outside. Mm-hmm. So some indecision was involved there. Related to this, I learned this week about a giveaway that was run in Washington for the Washington Redskins at the time in 1985. So this giveaway was for 2 free tickets and transportation to a Redskins game, along with a big pregame party with a large brunch, and the opportunity to win either season tickets for the next year or a trip to New Orleans, all expenses paid, for the Super Bowl later that season, which in recent years, maybe season tickets for the Redskins wouldn't be quite as hot of a commodity, but
this is the Joe Gibbs era.
Oh man!
In the 80s, they had won the Super Bowl in 82. They won in 87, and I guess in 1985 there was a 25-year wait list for season tickets for Redskins games.
Oh, how times have changed!
So very, very hot commodity item. Be a very popular giveaway.
Imagine being the guy who in 1985 is like, oh man, in 2010 it's going to be my year, and then he finally gets there and it's like 1 year before RG3 gets drafted, and And it's just like they win 2 games.
And by that time, the name of the team has already changed to the Commanders.
Right.
And, lots of differences going on. So what ended up happening was there was a little over 100 people who received a letter from this new all-sports television channel called Flagship International Sports TV, indicating that their names had been randomly selected from a clearinghouse list in Washington, D.C., to receive this prize. And all they needed to do was show up at the Washington Convention Center the morning of this game, and they would get the food, the opportunity to hang out with like some high-level people at this company, and then get transported to the game and watch the game. The unfortunate part for these giveaway winners is that no one won the Super Bowl tickets, and they never got to see the Redskins game that day. So on this day, the 100 lucky winners ended up in prison instead of at the football stadium.
I was afraid this was a murder mystery. I was like, where are we going here?
Not quite, but close.
This isn't good, though. Yeah.
So this entire event was a sting operation created by the U.S. Marshal Service called Operation Flagship, directed at apprehending a large number of federal fugitives in Washington, D.C.
Wow. They live right in the nation's capital, and they're just turning themselves in.
You're right. That is insane.
Yes. A man named Robert Leschorn, or Lacorn, or however, I'm sorry, I'm butchering his last name. I asked Payton for advice on how to pronounce it earlier today.
I was thinking maybe Lashorn.
Lashorn. Either way, whatever his last name was, his first name was Robert.
Like a French man shearing a sheep.
Lashorn.
Yeah. I'll refer to him as Robert just to avoid butchering his name for
Bobby.
For
you call him Bobby for short.
He was the man with the brains behind this plan for the sting operation. So he had previously worked for the U.S. Marshals in New York City, designing sting operations, and knew that the keys to these types of operations are creating that bait that would be super enticing to federal fugitives, that they would drop their guard and be like, yeah, I want to come out and like go to a Redskins game for free. So some of the execution of this was pretty interesting. They actually mailed more than 3,000 invitations for this event to the last known addresses of fugitives, totaling over 5,100 outstanding warrants between all of them. It was kind of interesting. Some of the members of the team, when they were talking about as they were creating the plan, it was like writing a movie script.
Oh, man.
And so like movie scripts, there were numerous Easter eggs that they planted throughout their messaging. So I have a couple here that were pretty interesting. The first is the name of the fictitious firm who ran the giveaway was Flagship International Sports Television, aka FIST. So this was a nod to the U.S. Marshals Service Fugitive Investigative Strike Team that was formed in the 1980s, specifically designed to go to a number of different cities where there was higher concentration of crime and more fugitives and criminals out participating in criminal activity. And their goal was just to bring in large numbers of them at once. So the most obvious one, the acronym for the TV company name. Second was the name signed on the letter informing each person of their good fortune was I, Michael Detnaw, which is an acronym for I'm Wanted. If you take the first letters of the first and middle name, so I and M, and then take Detnaw backwards, it is I'm Wanted.
Are the people that planned this, are they just really bored in their jobs, or are they geniuses? I think it could go either way.
Well, they got all these people there, so they must, in some ways, it has to be considered genius, I would think.
Also, who knew that Taylor Swift did not invent the Easter egg? I thought she invented that technology.
And then the third one that they threw in there was the contact's last name of the person that they were looking for to claim their tickets to the game at the event was Cran, which is narc spelled backwards. So they obviously had some fun with the extensive planning that went into this operation.
So, Kenton, you said there was over 3,000 potential ones that were sent out, and then how many people?
They ended up getting about 101 to show up on the day of the event.
Right. Obviously, so many things could go into them not coming, of not receiving it because it was a wrong address or things. But I feel like that's a pretty good hit rate. And it does make you wonder if any of that, if there was that very smart fugitive that's like, oh, this thing is just full of anagrams. Do you think any of those 3,000 people just outsmarted them and didn't go?
Could be. We'll never know. But they did say a little over half of the invitations, I think, bounced back because of incorrect addresses. So pretty low hit rate on their wide blanket of mailing.
But of the ones that hit, I mean, you said it's 3,100. They caught 1 in 15.
Yeah.
I mean, that's feels like a good use for tax dollars. I can think of worse uses.
Exactly. Creative writing and postage. Really, that's transportation, I guess.
Yeah. So on the day of this fictitious event that was happening, the criminals arrived at the convention center, staffed with 166 undercover police officers, posing as cheerleaders, caterers, ushers, cleaning personnel, and then representatives of the fake sports network. But they got a little crazy with some of the costumes that people were in. So they had the cheerleaders, they had people who were dressed in Indian headdresses for the Redskins. They had a knockoff of the San Diego Chicken, which is the San Diego Padres mascot.
What?
Yeah.
Someone had to be shot down because they wanted to wear a Santa suit.
Wow.
All kinds of super random stuff happening.
I'm just picturing how cruel this is. Not only some of these guys are probably lifelong fans. They think they're going to win their dream tickets. They think they're going to be on TV, and they have cheerleaders, or who they perceive to be cheerleaders, flirting with them and talking to them. I mean, they're probably in their own heaven. And then you think they didn't just go to going in jail from maybe the best day of their life to then being arrested. This is a sad setup.
Yeah. So on that note, they conducted discrete weapons checks on each of these criminals by giving them hugs and putting arms around their shoulders and all that kind of stuff. So really letting the good vibes flow before they turn the tables on them all.
Payton hugged us when we came to his place today. Probably similar. He was checking for knives and things.
Yeah. I thought that if I went and hugged your ankles, that you wouldn't think anything of it. But yeah, I mean, hey,
it's does Kenton have his prison shiv with him? He doesn't. Not today. It's not in the boot.
So all of these people were given 6 weeks of training for this event, and they conducted 3 dress rehearsals in preparation for the day. But the setup was actually so convincing that people outside of who was intended to come heard about this event. They actually had a lawyer from a cable company show up at the event to complain that the fake television company did not have the proper license to operate in Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow. They're like, shh, stop, get him.
Out there threatening to sue when they're just trying to arrest a few criminals.
This is why people don't like lawyers.
So they had the chief of enforcement operations for the U.S. Marshals at the time, Louis McKinney, wear a tuxedo and a super large top hat and act like the eccentric master of ceremonies / head of the fictitious company.
It's amazing.
But they were concerned about trying to arrest everyone all at once. So what they came up with was they were going to split the fugitives into groups of about 15 at a time to take them to an upstairs room where they would get a one-on-one talk with the head of this company, and where they would get their tickets for the upcoming game. And so they went into this room, and this guy went into this whole big speech about all the exciting things that this company was going to do and how lucky all these people were to be there. And the key was when he said the word surprise, a group of special operations officers all just rush into the room with guns and arrest everybody.
The old switcheroo.
Yes.
So wait, it was all at once then?
So they did 15 at a time.
Okay,
so they
yes.
got to
Got it.
operate this 6, 7, 8 times.
That seems like the right amount because yes, I agree. Like you can't get them all at once, but if it was a one-on-one pure, like that would be tiring. If
Yeah.
you have to do that like over 100 times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine that he gave that speech. I mean, I feel like as soon as the door shut, I'd be like, surprise. The fact that he said anything, I'm just like, get to the point here. This whole thing's fake.
Maybe he just really enjoyed the build up to
Yeah.
him getting to say surprise and watching.
He always wanted
The
to be
events
the Monopoly
unfold.
man. So
Right.
vibing with that top hat in big ways.
So I did think it was interesting. I found a couple of stats about this operation. The rap sheet of those apprehended included 15 warrants for assault, 5 for robbery, 6 for burglary, 4 for escape, 19 for bond default or bail violation, 18 for narcotics violations, 59 for probation or parole violation, and 41 for a variety of charges from rape to arson to forgery.
Wow.
So
I don't know.
And that number adds up to more than the people that were there, right? So the people had multiple.
Oh, yeah, they're
several counts. Yeah.
Well, and so interestingly enough, as a whole, the operation led to 144 arrests. So I'm assuming that when they took some of these people into custody, they flipped on some others
see,
who
yes.
were not present.
Are you saying these guys didn't show character?
Maybe.
Okay, well, that's shocking. But if you want to make that allegation, okay.
So, and then as a whole, the entire operation costs about $22,000 to run, which with the 144 arrests is about $153 per fugitive.
Seems
math-wise.
Seems good in a big metro area.
Yeah.
Which the average in 1985 for the marshals, an apprehension was about $1,300
Wow.
per fugitive. So they were very efficient with the money that was spent and all the time that went into all of this.
The blood, sweat, and tears into that script.
Yeah, this is an award-winning sting. I mean, this is super efficient.
It was one of the most successful sting operations in history.
Should we go pursue the rights and make this a script? I feel like this is a great movie waiting to happen.
Yes.
So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Oh, okay. Whoops. Accidental segue.
So if you would like to see a modern day adaptation, a movie came out in August of last year by M. Night Shyamalan called Trap, which I realized when researching this, I found an article that talked about how he found this operation and was super inspired by it and created the movie Trap, which I personally have not seen. I think it just came onto streaming not too long ago, but it's about a convict who goes to a concert with his daughter and then in the middle of the concert learns that the entire concert is fake and was designed as a trap to catch some wanted criminal, but people didn't know that that criminal was him or something like that. That's a really terrible explanation of this movie. Go watch it. I'm sure it's really great.
I'm very excited.
If it's, but at some point someone says, I see dead people, right? Because I think that's what happens in all of those movies.
I cannot say I have
Okay,
not seen
okay.
it yet, but that is potential.
I see dead people.
Haley Joel Osment is a 40-year-old.
So I know you guys have given several public service announcements on this podcast. I would
Yes.
like to add one more to the list. If you ever receive a text, an email, a letter, a phone call, any sort of communication claiming that you have won a giveaway that you don't recognize the company, you never entered, you have no knowledge of it, just be very, very careful or you may end up in prison.
Over the past few years, I've discovered that I really enjoy camping. It is a great way for me to get closer to nature. I think the more that I am cooped up inside with the computer, I know that I have to balance it out with some sort of walking somewhere, exploring, going on a hike or things like that. And camping has been a great way to maybe like once or twice a year, just kind of get out a little bit more in nature and explore. And, you cook on a fire, you can stargaze at night, it has been really fun for Amy and I to do together. And I wanted to ask you guys what your relationships with camping were.
I always say that my specialty is not touching grass. So I think that that explains mostly my feelings about camping.
Sure.
I grew up camping in a pop-up camper. We used to go, Ohio State parks and different things. And I think there's some things you kind of run from in your childhood. I think the older I get, it sounds like I've had a similar awakening where I, started to take my boys backpacking, and I've realized you live in the city long enough, and I'm like, I wouldn't mind seeing a tree or just hanging out in a tent or a hammock or getting in a kayak or something for a day.
Exactly. So about a year ago, I tried to up my game a little bit when it came to camping, where like we have like a 2 large tent. We have like a 6-person tent that Amy and I just like, have extra space in. But we decided that we wanted to rent a camper van, and we took a camper van just kind of in like the Southwest US for about a week or so. And we loved this. It was a great experience. It made it so much easier to get out in the middle of nowhere. We could wake up. It was very easy to like wake up for sunrise and like because you're already right there. You don't have to worry. We were out in the middle of nowhere too, so there'd be no one around. It was very secluded. And I think though probably my most favorite thing about renting that camper van versus my traditional camping is that I did not have to deal with setting up or tearing down a tent. That is probably my least favorite part. Amy and I are always getting into arguments about it. As you're trying to connect the poles, you always get stuck somewhere, or you're hammering the stakes in, and then you hit a rock, and then your stake just like bends 90 degrees, and then you're like, well, I've got to fix this later. And you get the tent set up, and then you realize the ground's uneven, and then now you have to like sleep with your head like below your feet or whatever. Like there's always some problem with getting the tent up, and then when you have to tear it down, it never fits back into the bag. It's a big hassle. So so like hearing that like you did Mark, that you did like the having a camper, that you didn't have to deal with that at all, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So I guess I can't really speak for Amy, but that I would say the tent is probably the worst part. But there are a lot of people out there who don't mind this. And there's at least one person that I know who is significantly better at pitching a tent than I am. And this guy used his skills at setting up tents to make himself famous, settle an argument, and win a little bit of money in a bet. So this story takes place in 2012 in South Korea on the SLR Club forums. So basically, this is a forum for people to talk about cameras. And I don't know how much time you've spent on internet forums over the years, but typically you have several sections of a forum that are meant for like very specific topics that are related to the website's purpose. And then you have like an off-topic area where you can just kind of talk about like whatever. And in one of these off-topic threads on the forum, that people were talking about things that you did when you served in the military. And South Korea, they have like a mandatory military service. A lot of countries in the world have some form of this, but like if you are an able-bodied man in South Korea, you have to serve. I think it's about 1.5 years, and there's a wide variety of ways this comes. It's not like you're out with a gun like shooting people. You could be like a cook or something. But everyone, like pretty much every guy in South Korea, and probably plenty of the women too, have this shared experience of doing things in the military. And one person on this forum thread mentions that when they were in the military, they had to set up a 24-person tent all by themselves.
Ooh.
And this person just gets ridiculed and made fun of because people say, that is impossible. You are lying. There's no way you ever did that in the military. And for some additional context, the U.S. Army is very entwined with the history of the South Korean Army. Obviously, the Korean War is a big reason for that. And, even today, there are a decent amount of U.S. Army and other just U.S. military personnel in South Korea. About 1 year ago, there was a story that broke about this. I don't know if you heard about the guy who ran across the border to North Korea.
I remember,
yeah.
I don't know too much about it. But
Yeah, I think he got captured. I think the U.S. got him back, and then he got dishonorably discharged or something. who knows all the details there, but the point is that like US military culture and South Korean military culture are around each other enough that there is a specific type of tent that the person is referring to that all the South Koreans would have known about. So this is a 24-person tent. It's usually referred to as a T24. And if you've ever watched any World War II movies and they have generals or commanders or whatever talking in some sort of tent, it's essentially that tent. It's just one of these kind of like boring colored canvas tents that you would set up when you're out like in the field somewhere.
It's that Gomer Pyle tent.
Probably,
Yeah,
yes.
all right.
So the U.S. Army says that it should take 8 people 1 full hour to set up one of these 24-person tents. And including the canvas and the poles, that everything in total weighs 450 pounds. So this guy was saying that he could do that all by himself and that he actually had done that. But after all of the people saying, like, there's no way, this is impossible, stop lying, a user with the name LV7Bug or Level 7 Bug, I'm not totally sure. So I'm referring to him as Bug going forward. Bug backs this guy up and he says, well, I can set up a 24-person tent by myself. And this starts to snowball over time, as kind of arguments on the internet do. And he eventually makes an official bet with a user named Wanderer Choi. And he had 2 hours to set up a 24-person tent. And all of the supports must be set up properly and in the correct shapes. And if Bug succeeds, he will receive 500,000 won, which is the equivalent in 2012 to $400 US.
Some good money.
Exactly. And if he loses, he has to pay the cost of acquiring that tent, essentially covering the cost, which I'm assuming is less than $400, but who knows?
Probably not would be my guess. That's a big old tent.
Think of the amount of cost of the canvas even,
Yeah.
and like military supply stores, who knows? Yeah. So they agree to this, and they set into motion the first and only T24 festival. On September 8th, 2012, about 3,100 people gather at Shinwon Elementary School on the playground. They have cleared off the playground and they have stands set up for all of these people to watch. But after they got like the 3,100 people, they had to start turning people away because they were at capacity. But don't worry, there were about 100,000 people watching on a live stream.
Wow.
That they could join if they weren't able to make it in person.
The power of the internet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There were a lot of concerns about the weather that day because it had rained the day before. How is this going to affect the tent pitching? But the rain held off and things had dried enough that it ended up not really being a factor. And the day ends up starting off with some musical performances. And one of them was very on brand, I would say. It was a song that Josh Groban made popular, You Raise Me Up. And I think there were some other songs as well to kind of kick things off. And then Bug arrives in this makeshift stadium in a sponsored vehicle. It's got like logos on the side because, yes, there were corporate sponsorships. There were many. Soy Sauce Online had a big logo on the tent, on the canvas.
He's the Lionel Messi of the tent world.
Oh, absolutely. There was a PC cooling fan company that like had giveaways where they had done like a raffle that you could win like PC parts.
It's honestly good marketing. Like they probably know their clientele.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, like they know they're on a forum. They all care about their computer parts.
Yeah.
And they're even just like other companies are throwing merch just like into the crowds, like not T-shirt cannon, but like more or less T-shirt cannon.
Mouse pads.
Oh,
Exciting
sweet.
things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But because of a weird meme that was going around the forum at that time, several people showed up trying to sell sweet corn to the crowd. This was all very poorly translated from Korean to English on a website I was reading, so it was very hard to understand. But I think the whole sweet corn thing is that there was some sort of like feud that happened in the past with like illegal street racing. And I guess saying that you're going to sell sweet corn at an event means that you're expecting there to be a disaster or a catastrophe. So the people that all showed up trying to sell the corn were trying to be like, this guy's going to fail. He's going to screw up.
I think you just said the plot of the next Fast and Furious movie. Actually, I'm not sure.
Yes.
It's not out yet, but
So they were all turned away, though. I guess they said that like corporate sponsorships are okay, but like commerce on the grounds was not.
No.
So they might have
That's
been able
where
to
they draw
stay.
the line.
Right, exactly. You
Fair.
can't sell this corn, which I guess it is like very popular to sell street corn in Korea. I have no
Okay.
idea,
I'll
but
take your word for it.
I found many pictures of it happening online. So
It's amazing.
so this event finally gets underway after all of this pageantry, but Bug just doesn't have the sense of urgency that you might think someone has with like a clock ticking down. He is like taking breaks to eat military rations, and then there are other times when like he does a little bit of work and then he stops, and then he just starts running around doing crowd work. He's like hyping the crowd up and stuff, just being the showman that apparently he is. But there was like an unofficial committee that helped organize all of this, and I think they were trying to hedge their bets that this might be really boring to watch someone pitch a tent for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
So they had dance routines scheduled in the middle. So there are times when he is just like, he's working on his little like stakes and poles and stuff, and there is just like a dance group just going to town, like right behind the tent.
This has to be the most extravagant event that's ever happened at an elementary school.
Probably it beats, I don't know. When I was a kindergartner, I do remember that my principal, I think he had to kiss a cow on the elementary school
classic.
grounds. It was like we
Classic.
had a fundraiser. He lost, the school won basically, and he got to do that. But
Were you selling magazines or meats and cheeses? Because there's only two things.
that is a very good question. I don't think I got to participate because I always wanted to do those things, and then my mom would say like, "This is just like a scam to get a bunch of money for things that people don't want." But like, I still got to watch Mr. McCumber kiss the cow, so it was still good for me.
Your
Still
mom and
win.
my mom are the same person.
And you know what? Probably she was a little bit right.
Yeah. In hindsight, she was onto that MLM scheme long
Yes.
before.
So about halfway through this festival, though, Bug, he takes off his shirt to reveal another shirt that has muscles printed on it. And this was probably the least necessary thing that he did the whole time from watching it, because this guy is pretty muscular. He's also like a relatively good looking guy. There's a lot of people that like came up with nicknames afterwards for him about how attractive and good looking he is. Like, I felt sad because it's like, he doesn't need to have a fake muscle shirt. I'm the one who needs to have like the fake muscle shirt. Save it for the rest of us. But I will say that after 1 hour and 25 minutes, Bug completes the last little bit of the tent. And to call out his haters, he climbs to the top of the tent, stands on the top to prove that he has not cut any corners. Everyone on the forums is like, he's going to cheat on this top pole. He's going to do this technique that is going to like technically work, but not be stable. So he stands up there on that pole to be like, I did this legit in the time period in less than 2 hours. And if you subtract all the time that he's like eating rations and doing crowd work, he probably gets it in almost an hour.
Wow.
So Bug did receive his 500,000 won for the bet. It did come through. And he also got a trophy. Also a free stay at a nice hotel. There was some comedian in South Korea who said like, you know what, man, if you pull this off, I'm going to like put you up in a nice hotel. Like you deserve this. There was also like one of the musicians earlier was like a somewhat popular celebrity in South Korea, and her agent apparently told her like, don't go to this. This is stupid. This is not a good idea. And she said like, I don't care. I am here to support Bug. And like she sings the song and she sticks around afterwards. She doesn't leave when her song is done. She's there cheering the whole time.
She's a fan.
Exactly. So, even the Korean military, who had tweeted previously and said, we don't know if this is really possible, they had to come out and say, you know what, Bug, you proved it. It is possible, and you did do it, and you were correct. And ultimately, Level 7 Bug won that bet and was the hero of the day at the T24 festival. And I think this is a great lesson in individual achievement. Like, teamwork is important. Teamwork can make the dream work. I don't want to encourage people to always do it alone. But like sometimes you don't have someone around to help you. Or sometimes, like when Amy and I are setting up our tent, it leads to arguments. Sometimes it might have been more efficient for like one of us just to be like, do it on our own. I don't know. I haven't tried. We'll find out the next time we camp. But once in a long while, doing it alone can win you some really good bragging rights with strangers on the internet. Thank you for listening to the Factoid Podcast. As always, you can send us an email at what'syours@factoidpodcast.com if you find something that you want us to research and tell you more about in the future, or if you have learned something that you're just proud of that is kind of a little bit useless, I will validate you. I will let you know that like this is not pointless. I was actually watching a YouTube video the other day about how like nerds who just wanted to learn about Gila monsters led to the GLP-1 Ozempic like being discovered. And it was, they wanted to just learn something for fun. They were not looking to try to solve human health problems. And in some ways, just learning knowledge for the sake of knowledge for fun can be really fulfilling. So if you have an epiphany like that, just send us an email and we'll see you here in the future.